The first time I found a necklace in my fiance's car, his mother called me to explain. Wiley, you've got the wrong idea. Rowan didn't do anything. I accidentally left my necklace there. The second time, I found 2 movie ticket stubs. My best friend Sandy tagged me in our shared group chat. Wiley, don't overthink it. I asked Rowan to help me buy those tickets. Then came the third time, then the fourth time. Every time, someone always stepped forward to explain things on his behalf. That was until the 9th time. I pulled a lipstick tube from the crack between the car seats and held it up in front of him. Whose lipstick is this? Rowan's hand trembled, almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel, before he calmly dialed a number. There's a lipstick in my car. Which one of you left it behind? My younger brother and Sandy answered the call. Rowan. So that's where I left it. No wonder Sandy's been looking everywhere for it. But seriously, Wiley, why are you getting suspicious again? Didn't everyone tell you at the last gathering? If you keep making a fuss like this, maybe the 2 of you shouldn't get married at all? Sandy chimed in. Exactly, Wiley. Rowan treats you so well. Don't you know that you've really been taking things too far lately? After hanging up, Rowan looked at me with an innocent expression. Well, can you stop doubting me now? This is already the 9th time. Wiley, if you pull something like this again, then maybe we should reconsider the wedding. I smiled and cut him off. In that case, let's not get married. We'll just call it off. What Rowan did not know was that the lipstick did not belong to his mistress or my best friend. I had bought it myself and deliberately left it in his car. It was to expose the lies everyone had been telling, to cover up his affair. I've already canceled the wedding banquet at the hotel. Make sure you notify your relatives and friends. The moment Rowan heard that, he slammed on the brakes. Wiley, are you seriously doing this?
What now?
You don't even believe your own little brother and your best friend?
He turned to look at me.
His expression darkened completely. Maybe you really should see a therapist. This isn't what a normal relationship looks like. You don't even believe your own brother? How am I supposed to prove my innocence if there isn't even the most basic trust between us? Then, what's the point of getting married? The moment he finished speaking,
his phone rang.
When he saw who was calling, the coldness in his eyes instantly softened. I have something to take care of. Go home and think about what you did. I'll pretend nothing happened today. His black Mercedes sped away without hesitation. I refused to give up, so I stopped a taxi and followed him. Half an hour later, the location tracker on my phone stopped at a seaside restaurant. Through the glass windows, I saw a lively first-month celebration for a newborn taking place. Inside, the room was filled with familiar faces, and the sound of clinking glasses and laughter echoed throughout. The woman surrounded by everyone was wearing the pearl necklace I had found in Rowan's car. The first time, the hair tie on her wrist was the same one I had pulled from his pocket. The third time, when I finally saw her face, clearly, the calmness I had forced myself to maintain completely collapsed. Was her. A month ago, while I was changing in Fordrip, a patient's blood accidentally flowed back due to my mistake. Her name was Vivian Zimmer. Vivian's family immediately accused me of mistreating a patient and filed a complaint with the hospital headquarters. During the argument, one of her bodyguards shoved me to the ground. My right hand was fractured on the spot, and I was suspended from work. Now my younger brother, Charles, who had once helped me handle the lawsuit and ran around everywhere for me, was busy helping Vivian drink at the table. My best friend, Sandy, who had repeatedly argued with hospital executives on my behalf and stayed up all night writing appeals, was now busy entertaining Vivian's guests. As for Rowan, the man who had just sworn up and down that he was innocent, he was the biggest joke of all. Rowan, you're late. Shouldn't you do something to make your wife happy? He pulled Vivian into his arms and kissed her, as everyone around them cheered and egged them on. One scene after another played out like a cruel joke. Tearing at my nerves had been Vivian's family all along. They were the ones who took my small mistake and turned it into a huge scandal,
causing me to lose my job.
At that moment, it felt as though my face had been pressed against a burning, hot iron plate. The heat spread through my nerves and exploded inside my mind. This was what it felt like to be played for a fool by everyone you trusted. My phone suddenly vibrated. A notification from the hospital appeared on the screen. Dr. Lane, your transfer request has been approved. Please report to Polonia Hills Hospital in 3 days. I stared at the message and suddenly found it ridiculous. Fine. There was nothing left in this city worth staying for. 3 days from now, everything between Rowan and me would come to an end. I turned around with heavy steps, unwilling to look at that disgusting scene any longer. However, Vivian caught sight of my familiar figure and chased after me. Dr. Lane, Did you come here just for our baby's first month celebration? I thought you were still upset and refusing to come. Please don't blame my family. They were just too worried about me. So that's why those misunderstandings happened. This is actually the perfect chance. Let me introduce you to them today. And once we talk everything through, there won't be any misunderstandings anymore. She hooked her arm around mine, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, and walked me over to the crowd, smiling brightly. Guys, guess who's here? In an instant, every pair of eyes turned toward me. The smiles on Rowan, Sandy, and Charles' faces froze the moment they saw me. This is my best friend, Sandy. She works in the psychiatry department at your hospital, too. You two have probably met before, right? Sandy's eyes flickered several times before she finally forced out, stiffly, "Nice to meet you, Dr. Lane." Her tone was polite yet distant, as though we were meeting for the very first time. Unaware of anything strange, Vivian pulled me over to Charles. "This is my best friend from college, Charles. He's the idiot lawyer who reported you, but I've already taught him a lesson. Dr. Lane, please don't take it personally. Don't bother arguing with this dumb *SS. Charles's face was heavy with mixed emotions. His eyes darted away Wiley. His voice was too quiet and disappeared beneath the noise around us. Vivian did not hear him. Finally, she brought me to Rowan, then affectionately leaned into his arms. "And this is my husband. He's—" I smiled and interrupted her. "Rowan, the owner of this restaurant." Vivian was startled. For a moment, she looked at Rowan, then back at me. "How do you know that? Have you two known each other for a long time?" I let out a small laugh and deliberately ignored the warning. "Look in Rowan's eyes." Then I slowly said, "He's my boyfriend. We've been together for 7 years. And we've been preparing for our wedding. Recently actually bought this restaurant for me." "Did he really never tell you any of that?" Back then, I casually told him that I wished I could sit here every day and watch the ocean. The very next day, this place became my 26th birthday gift. It was not until 6 months ago, when Rowan claimed his company was short on funds, that I agreed to sell it to help him through the crisis. Finally knew the truth. That was just another one of his lies. "Dr. Lane, what are you talking about?" Vivian's eyes reddened as she turned toward me. "Rowan and I got our marriage certificate a year ago. How could he possibly be your boyfriend? What's going on?" Rowan panicked instantly. "Vivian, listen to me. Let me explain." When I heard that, my heart sank and all the noise in my head went silent. I had been betrayed and deceived, yet the only thing he cared about was explaining himself to Vivian. I suddenly laughed, as if I was finally releasing years of pain. I began exposing every piece of our past. He has a surgical scar on his lower back. He got it 4 years ago, when he saved me during a confrontation with a patient's family. The jade pendant he wears was something I prayed for at Puji Temple and gave to him. So yes, you are the woman he kept hidden from me, the mistress he was seeing behind my back. Wily enough. The three of them shouted at me at the same time. While Vivian's eyes turned completely red, Rowan's gaze instantly turned cold. Sandy and Charles looked at me with nothing but blame. "Am I wrong, Ro? When Sandy and you, Charles, are you all really going to pretend you didn't do anything wrong?" Rowan pulled the trembling Vivian into his arms and spoke coldly. "Wiley, Vivian knew nothing about this. If you have something to say, say it to me. Don't attack her like that." Sandy stepped forward. Her voice was sharp. "Wiley, Rowan stopped loving you a long time ago. The person he truly loves now is Vivian." Charles finally gathered the courage to argue back. "Riley, now that you know the truth, just let them be. Vivian risked her life to give him a child. No matter how much you make a scene today, you can't tear apart their family of 3. One hurtful sentence after another struck me. My eyes burned so much that I could barely hold back my tears. "So, is that why you all work together? To destroy my career? To have someone break my hand?" A wave of resentment and fury surged from my chest. I stared directly at Vivian, then looked at every single one of them. "She's the other woman, and you're all her accomplices. Tell me, am I wrong?" Before I could finish speaking, a glass of ice water was poured over my head. The water soaked my hair and chilled my heart completely. "Wake up, Wiley. You're the one who was abandoned, not Vivian." Amid Vivian's aggrieved sobs, Andy angrily grabbed my arm. She dragged me upstairs into the lounge. This place used to be Rowan's and my secret hideaway. It was close to the hospital, so he would bring me here to rest for a while. Whenever I was exhausted after surgery, knowing that I often forgot to eat when I was busy, he would personally prepare meals and pack them in an insulated bag for me. He also knew I suffered from neck pain. He especially bought a massage chair and placed it in the living room. Those little acts of tenderness once made me believe that this was what love looked like. However, this place was now a nursery. Changing tables, diapers, and children's toys filled every corner. Everything that proved his and my love had once existed here had been completely erased. He's only ever loved Vivian. As for you, Sandy looked at me coldly. He just mistook his gratitude for you saving his life as love. I was stunned for a moment. What do you mean? She did not answer.
She only looked at me.
With sympathy, then she pulled down the projector screen, revealing a wall covered with photographs. All of them were of Rowan and Vivian. They had gone skiing on Mount Pectu, walked along the shores of Moraine Lake chasing sunsets, and taken a romantic boat ride through charming canal towns. They've been together for 3 years. On your birthday last year, Rowan wasn't on a business trip. Charles and I weren't on our honeymoon either. Sandy walked over and pointed at the wedding photo in the center. We all went to France. We attended their wedding and witnessed their happiness. And that medical dispute was arranged by Rowan, too. If we hadn't been afraid that you would discover Vivian's identity and refuse to treat her properly, why would we have hidden everything from you until now? I looked at Sandy as though she were a complete stranger. I could not understand how those words could come from her mouth. Not long ago, she had given her bouquet to me, her only bridesmaid at her wedding. She told me that she wished I would marry my true love and live happily for the rest of my life. She even threatened Rowan that if he ever hurt me, she would not let him get away with it. However, she had been personally helping someone steal my happiness. She was even the one telling me that I was the one who had been abandoned. The tears I had been holding back finally fell. I could not even describe what I was feeling. All I knew was that the sincere heart I had given them had been trampled on again and again, until it was shattered, never to be pieced back together whole. Since that's the case, I looked at Rowan and Vivian, who had just pushed open the door. Each word came out slowly. Go ahead. I give you my blessing. Dr. Wiley, what are you talking about? The two of them stared at me in shock. However, I said nothing more. I simply removed the diamond ring from my left ring finger and placed it into Vivian's palm. May you have a lifetime of happiness together, and may your family of 3 stay happy forever. Sandy and Charles stared at me stunned. Rowan opened his mouth as though he wanted to say something. I did not want to hear a single word from him anymore. I pushed. The night air outside the seaside restaurant was thick with a scent of salt and fuel. I did not run. Running implied panic, and panic belonged to people who still had something left to lose. I simply walked down the concrete steps toward the road, my breath coming out in thin, deliberate mist, my right hand hanging heavy and stiff in its subtle, aching brace. Behind me, the glass doors burst open. Wiley. Rowan's voice carried that familiar, polished timbre, the exact tone he used whenever he convinced me that I was being oversensitive, that his late night business trips were essential, that his mother's coldness was just her way. He caught up to me at the edge of the curb, grabbing my left elbow. His grip was tight, desperate, but his eyes were darting nervously back toward the lit windows of the restaurant, checking to see if Vivian or her family had followed him out. Even now, his priorities were cleanly split. What the hell was that? Rowan hissed, his voice dropping into a harsh whisper. Are you insane? Giving her the ring? Talking about the restaurant? Do you have any idea how much work I put into keeping Vivian calm after her birth? Her father has influence over the Municipal Development Board. If you ruin this for me. I turned my head slowly to look at him. For 7 years, I had memorized every detail of this face. I had loved the small scar near his eyebrow from a childhood fall. I had kissed his eyelids when he stayed up late calculating budgets for a business he claimed was struggling. I had handed over my life savings, the proceeds from the oceanfront restaurant my parents helped me secure because he had held my hands, looked into my eyes, and wept about his company's impending bankruptcy. Looking at him now, it felt like staring at a poorly rendered wax figure. The mask hadn't just slipped, it had melted away, leaving behind a pathetic, calculated core. Take your hand off me, I said. My voice was entirely flat.
Nonget.
No tears. Just clean, sterile emptiness. Rowan blinked, momentarily taken aback by the lack of emotion in my face. He usually thrived on my passion. My hurt allowed him to play the patient, long-suffering partner, while my anger gave him an excuse to call me hysterical. Wiley, listen to me, he tried again, softening his stance, stepping closer to block the wind. You're hurting. I get it, but you're misunderstanding the situation. Vivian, she was fragile. Her family stepped in when we were having a rough patch 3 years ago. It started as a business arrangement and then things got complicated. But you're the one I've been with for 7 years. I was going to handle this properly once her baby was settled. You married her a year ago, Rowan. I interrupted softly. You stood in France with my best friend and my brother while I was working a 36-hour shift in the trauma unit, sending you care packages because I thought you were suffering on a business trip. That was. And the medical incident. I looked directly into his eyes. The patient who pushed me? The bodyguard who broke my hand. Rowan's jaw twitched. He couldn't hold my gaze. He looked down at the asphalt. You knew, I stated. It wasn't a question. Vivian's family wanted me off the hospital board, so I wouldn't be around when she came in for her prenatal checkups. You, Charles, and Sandy coordinated it all. You let them ruin my career so I wouldn't accidentally run into your secret wife in the VIP wing. It was just temporary, Rowan said defensively, his voice rising in frustration. We just needed you out of that specific hospital for a few months. Charles promised he'd fix your license later through a civil appeal.
Sandy said.
You were burnt out anyway, that you needed rest. I let out a single, quiet laugh. It felt like dry leaves scraping across pavement. They really bought into your vision, didn't they? I murmured. Or maybe they just liked being invited to the high society parties. I pulled my arm free from his grasp. The movement was so sudden and absolute that Rowan stumbled back a step. Don't touch me again, I said. And don't follow me. Wiley, stop acting like a child. Rowan snapped, his vanity flaring up as his
control slipped.
Where are you going to go? Your hand is crippled. You have no
job.
Your brother and your best friend are in there with me. You have no one left in this city. I raised my left hand, showing him the bare ring finger where his diamond had sat an hour ago. Then I have nothing left to lose, I said. I stepped up to the taxi that had pulled up to the curb, opened the door, and got in. As the car pulled away into the rainy night, I watched Rowan in the side mirror. He stood under the street lamp for 3 seconds before his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, put on that familiar, gentle smile he reserved for Vivian, turned on his heel, and walked back inside the warm, golden light of the seaside restaurant. The apartment was suffocatingly quiet. It was a space we had shared for 4 years. The beige curtains I spent 3 weekends picking out, the custom wooden coffee table he insisted on buying, the framed photos on the hallway wall depicting our trips to the mountains, our anniversary dinners, our domestic bliss. I didn't cry. Tears were a luxury for people who were still mourning a loss. I was no longer mourning. I was conducting an autopsy. I pulled 2 heavy cardboard boxes from the closet and began. I didn't tear up the photos. I simply took them down frame by frame and stacked them at the bottom of the trash bin. I packed my clothes, my medical textbooks, my surgical instruments, and the few personal heirlooms my parents had left me before they passed away years ago. Everything Rowan had ever bought me, the designer bags, the jewelry, the coats, I lined up neatly on the living room floor. Alongside them, I laid out a legal folder. Inside were the original financial records of the restaurant purchase from 4 years ago, showing my initial down payment of $400,000, along with the bank transfer receipts showing I had transferred the remaining equity to Rowan's company under the guise of a corporate loan. He thought he had swept it all under the rug. He thought because he was the legal owner on paper, I had no recourse. But as a doctor, I kept records of everything. Every receipt, every bank statement, every tax form was scanned and saved on an encrypted cloud drive. At 2 a.m., the front door lock clicked. I didn't even look up from sealing my second suitcase. Charles walked in first. My younger brother, the boy I had paid tuition for, the boy I had stayed up nights preparing soup for while he crammed for the bar exam, the boy who had sworn at our parents' grave that he would always protect me. Behind him was Sandy. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed with red, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. They stood in the entryway, staring at the suitcases lined up by the door and the bare walls where our photos used to hang. Wiley, Charles started, his voice thick with hesitation. He took 2 steps forward, reaching out a hand. Where are you going? It's 2 in the morning. I ignore him, pulling the tape across the top of the box with a loud, sharp SHHHK. Wiley, please talk to us. Sandy stepped forward, her professional demeanor as a psychiatrist completely shattered. She looked terrified, not for me, but of the unnatural calm radiating off my shoulders. You're in shock. You're reacting emotionally to a traumatic revelation. You shouldn't make any major decisions tonight. Dr. Lin, I said, stopping her mid-sentence. Sandy froze. I hadn't called her Dr. Lin since our first year of residency, 8 years ago. As a senior psychiatric consultant, you should know that gaslighting a patient, or a friend, requires you to keep your story straight, I said, my voice steady and completely devoid of pitch. When you told me 3 weeks ago that I was suffering from persecution paranoia because I thought Rowan was lying about his schedule, was that clinical evaluation, or was that just part of your deal with Vivian? Sandy's face went entirely white. She took an involuntary step back, clutching her handbag against her stomach. Wiley, it wasn't like that. Rowan was desperate. He told us that if Vivian's father withdrew his venture capital, Rowan's company would go under and he'd end up in prison for fraud. He said he was doing it to protect you from his debt. So, to protect me from his debt, you helped him marry another woman? I asked, looking up at her finally. To protect me from his debt, you lied to my face for 3 years? To protect me, you stood by and watched her family's bodyguards fracture my hand and strip away my medical license. I tried to stop the bodyguard. Charles interjected, his voice rising in defensive desperation. Wiley, you know I filed the initial administrative review, but Vivian's father threatened to ruin my firm. I'm just an associate. Wiley, if I went against the Zimmer family, I would have been disbarred. Rowan promised me that as soon as the merger went through, he would pay off your medical bills and set up a private practice for you. A private practice, I repeated, letting the words hang in the heavy air.
With what?
Money harvested from his wealthy wife while he kept me as a hidden, compliant mistress in this apartment. Charles opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The ugly truth lay exposed on the hardwood floor between us, raw and nauseating. You sold me out, Charles, I said softly, looking at my brother. I worked night shifts to pay your legal fees when you failed the bar the first time.
I
sold my mother's ring so you could rent your first office. And when the time came, you traded my hands, my surgical career, for a seat at the Zimmer family's banquet table. Tears finally overflowed from Charles's eyes, running down his cheeks. Wiley, I'm your brother, please. Not anymore, I said. I picked up my phone and dialed a number on speaker. Attorney Vance, the voice answered on the third ring. It was Senior Legal Counsel Vance from my hospital's Ethics Oversight Committee, a man who had tried to help me during the administrative tribunal, but whom Charles had repeatedly blocked from accessing my files. Dr. Lane, Vance replied, surprised by the late call. Is everything all right? Attorney Vance, I am officially revoking my brother Charles Lane's legal representation in my administrative and civil case against the Zimmer family, I said clearly. Furthermore, I wish to submit new evidence regarding fraudulent misrepresentation, corporate asset concealment, and medical record tampering involving Dr. Sandy Lin and Mr. Rowan Wright. Sandy gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Wiley, are you crazy? You'll ruin Charles's career. You'll get my license revoked. Charles dropped to his knees on the rug, grabbing at my pant leg. Wiley, don't do this. I'm your family. You can't destroy my life over a mistake. I looked down at Charles. His face was twisted in terror, the same terror I had felt 6 months ago when the bone in my right hand snapped, and I realized I might never hold a scalpel again. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt nothing at all. You destroyed your own life, Charles, I said quietly, kicking his hand off my
shoe.
You just thought I would keep paying the bill for it. I grabbed the handles of my 2 suitcases, slung my shoulder bag over my arm, and walked toward the door. Wiley, wait, Sandy shouted, chasing after me into the hallway. Where are you going? The Polonia Hills transfer isn't for 3 days. Where are you going to? Stay. I didn't turn back. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside, pressed the button for the ground floor, and watched the brass doors slowly shut out. The sight of my brother weeping on the floor and my best friend staring at me with horror-filled eyes. Polonia Hills was a place where people went to vanish. Situated 300 miles north of the capital, it was a coastal region, dominated by high cliffs, gray seas, and dense, pine-scented mist. The Polonia Hills Memorial Hospital was not a grand, high-tech institution like the one I had left behind. It was a sprawling, stone-faced facility originally built in the 1950s, specializing in severe trauma, cold climate emergency response, and long-term physical rehabilitation. It was quiet. It was cold. It was perfect. I arrived 2 days early, checking into a modest Furnished apartment 3. Blocks from the hospital. The walls were plain plaster. The furniture was dark oak, and the windows faced the jagged black rocks of the coast. I spent those 2 days entirely alone. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts, and transferred my savings into a private, independent credit union. I sent a formal notice to the Municipal Property Registry, revoking Rowan's power of attorney over any residual assets tied to my name. On Monday morning, at 7 a.m., I walked through the heavy glass doors of Polonia Hills Memorial. Dr. Lane, a tall man in his late 50s, with steel-gray hair and a weathered, sharp face, stepped out of the chief of surgery's office. Dr. Arthur Vance, no relation to the attorney, but possessing the same clinical, no-nonsense eyes. "Yes, Chief Vance," I said, extending my left hand. He looked at my left hand, then glanced down at my right hand, which was wrapped in a black, high-compression support sleeve. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer pity. He simply shook my left hand with a firm, professional grip. "Your records from the Capitol came in," Chief Vance said, walking me down the broad, quiet corridor. "Your surgical speed and anatomical precision in cardiothoracic emergencies were top 3 in the province before your interruption." "I am aware," I said quietly. "Here, we don't care about capital city politics, Dr. Lane," he said, stopping outside an operating theater. "We care about hands that don't shake when a patient is bleeding out on the table. Your physical therapy records state that your right hand has recovered 70% of its gross motor function, but fine microvascular precision is still compromised. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir. I cannot perform delicate coronary bypasses yet. My index finger twitches under sustained pressure over 40 minutes. Then you will start in the trauma evaluation unit and triage," Vance declared, without hesitation. "You will diagnose, you will stabilize, and you will direct the surgical teams. When your hand is ready, you will return to the theater."
Is
that acceptable?" "It is more than acceptable, Chief."
good. Get changed.
First shift starts in 10 minutes. For the next 2 months, I threw myself into the brutal, beautiful rhythm of emergency triage. In the Capitol, my work had been burdened by administrative maneuvering, social galas with Rowan's associates, and constant emotional maintenance of a man who was quietly leeching my life away. Here, there was only the raw, immediate reality of human survival. A fisherman with a crushed pelvis, a hiker hypothermic from the northern trails, a child with acute appendicitis. My hands, though stiff and aching at the end of every 16-hour shift, learned new ways to move. I practiced my suturing every night on silicone pads until my right index finger stopped trembling, forcing the nerve pathways to rebuild themselves through sheer, unyielding repetition. I thought of no one from my past. I didn't check the news from the Capitol. I didn't search Rowan's name. I didn't look up Charles's legal cases or Sandy's psychiatric clinic. I dropped them into the deepest ocean of my mind and let the cold water swallow them whole. However, while I was rebuilding my life from the ashes, the fire I had left behind in the Capitol was beginning to consume everything they owned. In the Capitol, the narrative Rowan Wright had carefully constructed over 3 years was falling apart with breathtaking speed. It started with the lipstick. The lipstick I had left in his car on that fateful 9th occasion had not been a random purchase. It was an import luxury brand, a specific shade released in a limited run of only 50 tubes nationwide, registered to my personal VIP customer account at the Central Department Store. When Rowan dialed Sandy and Charles that night in front of me, forcing them to lie and claim it was Sandy's, he hadn't realized that the transaction history, complete with timestamps and my electronic signature, was permanently logged in the brand's database. When Attorney Vance, acting on the instructions I left behind before leaving, filed a formal complaint for conspiracy to commit insurance and administrative fraud against Rowan, Charles, and Sandy, he didn't just target the hospital tribunal. He sent the entire dossier directly to the legal board of directors at Vivian Zimmer's family conglomerate. The Zimmers were immensely wealthy, but they were deeply traditional and intensely protective of their public image. Vivian's father, Richard Zimmer, had agreed to Rowan's secret marriage with Vivian under one strict condition. Rowan was to be a clean, respectable, completely devoted husband who would manage the family's hospitality investments without bringing a whisper of scandal to the Zimmer name. Richard had been told that Wiley Lane was merely an obsessed, mentally unstable former classmate who was harassing Rowan. Then came the legal summonses. 2 weeks after I arrived in Polonia Hills, Attorney Vance served Rowan with a Lawsuit demanding the full return of the $400,000 capital investment in the seaside restaurant, plus accrued interest and damages for breach of fiduciary duty. Attached to the lawsuit were 7 years of text messages, bank transfers, and recorded phone calls, which I had systematically backed up, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Rowan had been living off my income while maintaining his marriage with Vivian. The news hit the legal channels first. Charles was the first domino to fall. As a junior associate at a prestigious corporate law firm, Charles's primary value had been his supposed connections to the hospital board and his ability to handle quiet settlements. When my complaint reached the state legal ethics committee, accusing Charles of suborning perjury, falsifying evidence to cover up a medical battery incident involving his own sister, and colluding with Rowan, right, to defraud a medical professional, his firm didn't even hesitate. They suspended him instantly. His name was scrubbed from the firm's website within 48 hours. Charles, you told me she wouldn't push this. Rowan slammed his fist onto the marble coffee table inside his lavish townhouse, a house purchased entirely with Vivian's family money. Charles sat on the sofa, looking hollowed out. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit rumpled, his phone buzzing incessantly on the table with calls from the bar
Association.
She's revoked everything, Rowan, Charles whispered, his voice trembling.
She
Cut off my access to her bank accounts. She canceled the trust fund our parents set up that required her joint signature. I have no money for my defense attorney. The Bar Association is opening a formal disbarment hearing next month. Then fix it. Rowan roared, his handsome face twisted in rage. Talk to her. She's your sister. She always forgives you. Remember 2 years ago when you crashed her car? She paid for the repairs and told the police she was driving. Go to Polonia Hills and beg her. I can't. Charles screamed back, tears of panic spilling over. She changed her number. She blocked my bank accounts. She left a message with her lawyer saying that if I approach her, she'll file a civil restraining order based on the physical intimidation at the hospital. Rowan, she's not angry anymore. That's the problem. When she was angry, we could handle her. Now she looks at us like we're bugs under a microscope. The door to the living room swung open. Vivian stood in the doorway, holding her newborn child. Her face was pale, her eyes sharp and cold. Behind her stood 2 large men in dark suits, her father's personal security detail. Vivian. Rowan's voice instantly shifted, trying to adopt that soft, reassuring
tone.
Darling, why are you out of bed? The doctor said. Who was Wiley Lane to you, Rowan? Vivian asked. Her voice was ice cold. Rowan swallowed hard. I told you, Vivian. She was an ex who. My father just received a legal notice from the High Court, Vivian interrupted, raising a thick sheath of papers. It includes bank statements from 3 years ago. It shows that the money you used to buy me that diamond necklace for our engagement came directly from a joint account held by you and Dr. Wiley Lane. It shows that the apartment you claimed was your corporate guest house was rented under her name. Rowan took a step forward, his hands trembling. Vivian, listen to me. Her family owed me. My father has revoked your executive position at the restaurant group, Vivian
said softly.
She didn't cry. She didn't throw a scene. She looked at him with the pure, unadulterated disgust of a woman who realized she had bought a counterfeit piece of art. The security guards are here to escort you out of this house. You have 1 hour to pack your personal belongings. My lawyers will serve you with the annulment and custody papers tomorrow morning. Vivian.
No.
You can't do this. Rowan lunged forward, but the 2 bodyguards stepped smoothly into his path, blocking him with heavy, iron-like arms. If you attempt to contact my daughter or step foot on Zimmer property again, one of the bodyguards said quietly, we will release the audio recordings of your conversation with Dr. Lin regarding the hospital cover-up directly to the district attorney. Rowan stood frozen in the center of the grand living room. The wealth, the status, the high society connections he had spent 7 years lying, cheating, and betraying his conscience to build, all of it dissolved into thin air in less than 10 minutes. 3 months after leaving the capital, winter set in hard over Polonia Hills. The snow fell heavy and dense, blanketing the dark cliffs and turning the ocean into a churning, violent shade of lead gray. Inside Polonia Hills Memorial Hospital, the trauma unit was operating at full
capacity.
An 8-car pileup on the coastal highway had brought in a flood of casualties. Dr. Lane, we have a severe arterial tear in trauma room 2, a nurse yelled down.
The hallway.
Dr. Vance is in surgery 1 with a crushed chest patient. We need someone to clamp the subclavian artery immediately, or he's going to bleed out.
I didn't hesitate.
Prepare a central line and get me a minor surgical tray. I ran into trauma room 2. The patient was a young truck driver, pale as chalk, his blood pooling rapidly across the white sheets. I snapped on my sterile gloves. My right hand, the hand that had been fractured, the hand my brother and best friend had allowed to be broken to protect a rich girl's vanity, was stiff from the cold. Not today, I told myself. I closed my eyes for 1 second, took a deep, abdominal breath and focused entirely on the anatomical map inside my brain. I didn't see Rowan's trembling hands. I didn't hear Sandy's fake, soothing voice. I didn't see Charles weeping on the floor. I saw only the subclavian artery, pulsing weakly beneath layers of torn muscle and tissue. I opened my eyes. My right hand slid into the wound with absolute, unwavering precision. My fingers found the vessel.
Click.
The vascular clamp locked into place. The arterial spurt stopped instantly.
The
Cardiac monitors frantic, high-pitched screaming slowed down into a steady, rhythmic beep. Pressure stabilizing. The nurse exhaled a massive breath of relief.
DR.
Lane, that was incredible. Your hands didn't shake at all. I looked down at my right gloved hand. The compression sleeve underneath was soaked in sweat, but my fingers were completely still. The break had healed. Not because time healed all wounds, but because I had stripped away the rot that was poisoning my life, allowing the healthy bone underneath to finally set strong. At 8 p.m., my shift ended. I walked out of the staff change room, pulling my heavy wool coat around my shoulders, ready to face the freezing wind outside. As I pushed open the double glass doors of the main entrance, I saw a figure standing under the bright fluorescent lights of the hospital driveway. He was covered in light snow. He didn't have a winter coat, just a rumpled, thin suit jacket that looked as though it hadn't been ironed in weeks. His hair was messy, his cheeks sunken, his posture slouched and broken. It was Rowan. He stood there, shivering violently, holding a paper bag from a high-end bakery, the same bakery in the capital where he used to buy me almond croissants. 7 years ago, when we were broke and dreaming of the future. When he saw me come out, his hollow eyes suddenly lit up with a desperate, wild
light.
Wiley, he choked out, taking 3 rapid, unsteady steps toward me. Wiley, I found you. I stopped 10 feet away from him. I didn't reach for my phone to call security. I didn't step back. I stood on the snow-covered concrete and looked at him as if he were an unexpected drift of slush on the pavement. Wiley, please don't turn away, Rowan begged, his voice cracking.
He
dropped to his knees right there in the snow, his hands clutching the paper bag, his body trembling violently from the cold and exhaustion. I was wrong. God. Wiley, I was so wrong. I don't care about the Zimmers. I don't care about the restaurant. They took everything from me. Wiley. Vivian canceled the marriage. Her father ruined my credit. The police are investigating the business loans. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his freezing face, cutting clean tracks through the dirt on his skin. They used me, Wiley. Vivian never loved me. She just wanted a quiet husband to appease her father. Sandy and Charles, they were just using my money. You were the only one who ever truly loved me. You were the only one who stood by me when I had nothing. He held up the greasy paper bag with trembling hands. Look, Wiley, I brought your favorite almond croissants from the shop near our old apartment. I drove 7 hours through the snowstorm to bring them to you. Remember how we used to share 1 croissant because we couldn't afford 2? Remember how happy we were? I looked at the paper bag. Then I looked at Rowan kneeling in the snow, weeping, desperate, trying to use 7-year-old memories like a fishing hook to drag me back into a swamp.
Rowan, I said.
My voice was quiet, clear, and carried easily over the howling winter wind. He looked up, hope flaring wildly in his eyes. Yes, Wiley? Yes. The croissants from that shop use almond extract instead of real almond paste. I said calmly. I always hated them. I only ate them because you bought them. And I didn't want you to feel bad about being poor. Rowan froze. The frantic, hopeful expression on his face turned completely vacant. I never liked them, Rowan. I continued, stepping forward until I was standing right above him. Just like I never liked the beige curtains, I never liked your mother's passive-aggressive comments, and I never liked staying up until 2 a.m., waiting for a man who was lying to me. Wiley, please, he whispered, his hands trembling so hard the paper bag fell into the dirty snow, soaking up the gray slush.
Give me one more chance.
I'll give you everything back. I'll work for you. I'll be whatever you want. I don't want anything from you, Rowan, I said, because you have nothing left
To give.
I walked right past him. Wiley, Wiley, he screamed behind me, his voice raw, hitting the ice-covered walls of the hospital. You can't just throw 7 years away. You loved me.
You.
Prayed for me at Pudgy Temple. You gave me the jade pendant. I stopped, reached into my coat pocket, and pulled out a small piece of green stone attached to a frayed red string. It was the jade pendant. He had left it on the bedside table the night he ran off to Vivian's baby party, and I had picked it up when I cleared out the apartment. I didn't turn around. I simply extended my right hand, my fully recovered, steady right hand, and opened my fingers. The pendant fell.
Clink.
It struck the icy asphalt and shattered into 3 clean pieces, sinking silently into the snow. I kept walking, my boots crunching rhythmically against the frozen ground, heading toward my warm, quiet apartment overlooking the sea. Spring arrived late in Polonia Hills, but when it came, it melted the heavy ice with startling speed. In May, 6 months after I left the capital, Attorney Vance sent me a final, physical package regarding the legal proceedings in the capital. I sat by the open window of my new apartment, listening to the seagulls hovering over the blue water, and opened the thick manila envelope. Inside were the court judgment documents and several news clippings from the capital's legal journal. Item 1. Legal disbarment and fraud charges. Charles Lane was officially disbarred by the Provincial Bar Association following a unanimous finding of severe ethical misconduct, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to defraud a victim of physical assault. Unable to secure employment in the legal sector and burdened by civil court orders demanding he pay back his share of the legal defense fees, he had surrendered his apartment and was currently working as a paralegal clerk in a small county 300 miles away, stripped of his license forever. Item 2. Medical license revocation. Dr. Sandy Lynn's medical license was suspended for 5 years by the Medical Ethics Oversight Board after internal psychiatric department logs proved she had fabricated mental health diagnoses for Wiley Lane to facilitate corporate gaslighting. Her private clinic closed down due to public outcry, and she was currently undergoing mandatory psychiatric evaluation herself. Item 3. Corporate bankruptcy and criminal investigation. Rowan Wright's corporate entity was declared fully bankrupt. The seaside restaurant was seized by the court and put up for public auction to satisfy his debts to creditors, including the $400,000 judgment awarded to me. The Zimmer family had completely severed ties with him, stripped him of his parental rights through an uncontested court order, and filed criminal charges for corporate asset misdirection.
He was
currently awaiting trial, living in a rented basement room on the outskirts of
the city.
Included in the package was a small, handwritten note from Charles tucked inside a folded piece of notebook paper. Wiley, I don't expect you to read this, and I know I have no right to call you my
sister.
I am paying for what I did every single day. Every time I walk into a courtroom where I used to be an attorney, now carrying files for people who look at me with pity, I think of your hand. I think of how I watched that bodyguard push you and how I stayed silent because I wanted a promotion.
You were right.
You didn't ruin my life. I sold my own soul for a seat at a table that wasn't even mine. I won't write to you again. I won't burden you with my existence. I just wanted to tell you.
I'm sorry.
I read the letter once. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel satisfaction. I simply folded the paper back up, placed it inside the envelope, and filed it away in my cabinet alongside old tax returns. Some debts, once paid in full, simply ceased to matter. 1 year later.
Dr.
Lane, Chief Vance is asking for you in Operating Theater 1. I looked up from my desk in the trauma department. What's the case? Complex double valve reconstruction following an acute aortic dissection, the nurse reported, her eyes bright with admiration. Chief Vance said you're the only surgeon in the hospital with the precision required for the microvascular suturing. Understood, I said, rising from my chair. I walked down the long, sunlit corridor of Polonia Hills Memorial Hospital. Through the grand glass walls, the spring ocean glistened like a band of diamonds under the clear blue sky. I entered the scrub room, turning on the taps with my elbows. I held my hands under the warm, running water, scrubbing my fingers, my palms, my wrists with antibacterial soap. I looked at my right hand in the mirror above the sink. The pale, Thin scar from the fracture surgery 6 months ago was barely visible. Now, a thin silver line running across the base of my index finger. A reminder of a storm I had survived, a fire that had refined me rather than consumed me. Dr. Lane, Chief Vance stepped into the scrub room, putting on his mask. Ready. Ready, Chief, I replied. I pushed open the doors to Operating Theater 1. The bright, white surgical lights illuminated the table. The heart-lung machine chimed steadily in the quiet room. The surgical team stood in position, waiting for my instruction. I stepped up to the operating table, extending my right hand toward the head.
Nurse.
Scalpel, I said cleanly. The cold steel was placed firmly into my hand. My fingers closed around it with absolute, unwavering stability. I made the first incision, precise and deep, moving forward into the light. Without a single glance behind,